All right. Welcome, everybody. We're going to talk about FIL RetroPGF program. We're going to give a quick recap of the Optimism RetroPGF program. We're going to talk about Filecoin's program, and then we're going to talk about round one. So in the Filecoin community, we want to do a lot of public goods funding. One of the main ways that we want to do that is through retroactive structures. This enables us to fund lots of the critical infrastructure that produces blockchains, open source miner client implementations, protocol research, documentation, community building, all kinds of important public goods that we all require to thrive. And we want to really lean into the retroactive structures because that can it's much easier to evaluate the impact after it's happened than to prospect on that. We wanted to kind of start with one example of a public good that the Filecoin community relies on. This is the Liquidity project. We built and funded the Liquidity project over time as a large community. The Liquidity project is a shared public good that now powers a huge fraction of the entire blockchain ecosystem. There's about, kind of like 300 billion plus. Actually, this was in November, so this is probably much larger now. It's probably like 400, maybe 500 billion in total market cap. And that's kind of like one of the things that's really cool is that Liquidity has gone from prospective funding to now being funded retroactively as well. So Liquidity was awarded a retro grant by the Optimism community, which is really, really cool. Also, there was significant like airdrops like Celestius and others that funded contributors to Liquidity for a long time. And there's like kind of a shared triumph of blockchain communities funding public goods. So I wanted to kind of give a quick brief into Optimism's RetroPGF structure. It's a retroactive round-based mechanism. It's a key component here to fund public goods in a particular ecosystem. The general loop is this one, where think of creating a structure that enables everybody around the ecosystem to really correlate impact with profit. Meaning, if you produce strong impact to the community, yet then you as an individual or as a community or as a group or a team, you profit from that. And creating that loop enables the value flow and the flywheel that Kevin was talking about in order to grow ecosystem value, grow the value that gets funded in terms of public goods, and then kind of drive the kind of long-term success of the projects. So there's a whole kind of website where you can find out about RetroPGF. Goes in detail about the round structures and whatnot. Here's a snapshot of a lot of the teams and projects that have been funded by the program. I mentioned the round structure. So this is a key component that makes RetroPGF work. So we've explored a lot of different mechanisms over the years. One of the key features that makes RetroPGF so successful is that the concrete round-based structure enables an iterative feedback improvement loop, both for the individual process itself and for all of the projects. So this means having a very concrete gating of there's one moment where the round starts. There's another moment where kind of like you go through and evaluate all of the projects and kind of reward everything and so on. And then you kind of kick off the next round. Gives you a really flexible structure to then kind of continue retrospecting and improving the program itself, which is one of the key things that I think differentiates the success of programs like Gitcoin grant rounds and RetroPGFs and so on from many other mechanisms that haven't been as successful. So here's a snapshot of the scale of the number of projects. So, the first round was very small. Quickly, people were like, oh, wow, this is for real. This is a huge deal. Round 2 was much bigger. By round 3, we have, the order of 500 projects going into the round. And they've also scaled the reward. So one of the key features here is that in order to make this entire flywheel work and to drive the impact, the actual reward that's distributed need to be quite big. So it's another reason why the Optimism RetroPGF round has been working so well, being able to do something like, deploy 30 million OP tokens in a particular round. That's what kind of like starts being able to fund and drive impact at a pretty large scale. If this was kind of a tenth of the scale, you wouldn't see the level of success that we're seeing now, right? So we need to kind of reach these kinds of scales. The kind of round structure, you can think of it as like, there's a period for impact, but when you're going to run the actual process of evaluating the results and so on, you first start by selecting a set of batch holders. Then project applicants submit projects. Then batch holders vote on those projects. Then you calculate and publish the results. You fund the projects, and after that, you reflect and improve the system for the next round. And it's this iterative structure that lets you over time adjust, how the kinds of things you fund, adjust how you incorporate the votes, adjust how you kind of aggregate and produce the results, change the funding structure or how you deliver the funding, change the batch holders or how the batch holders themselves think about funding things. This iterative structure and the reflection is a fundamental part of making this work. In order for this to work, you need the whole community of funders that are going to go do this to really participate and help drive the project. Here's a snapshot of some of the projects that the lists are pretty big, so I only was able to fit some in the screen while still legible. But you can find all the results publicly. You can go check them out and so on, which is really cool. And the coolest thing about all of this is that it's working at a pretty large scale. So we now have another great program in the ecosystem that is funding things at pretty large scale. Gitcoin was the first really big one that started funding a lot of projects at pretty large scale. RetroPGF is now, I think, the second one. There's been a number of other projects along the way, but not quite at this scale. So yeah, looking forward to kind of incorporating these components in our project. One of the cool things is that RetroPGF already has been funding a lot of public goods shared with the Filecoin network. So things like Liquidity, IPFS, Solidity itself, ETH Global, and a bunch more that didn't have time to screenshot are already being funded today by the Optimism community. Let's now tomorrow have the Filecoin network fund public goods shared with the OP network and have strong overlap to greatly improve the shared goods. Great. So that's kind of the background. Now let's talk about launching Filecoin RetroPGF.
Cheers. Thanks, Juan. Okay, so launching Filecoin retroactive public goods funding. You can see where the inspiration comes from. So the ideas have been seeded and discussed over many years. It's kind of a case of think slow and act fast. That's what we're wanting to do, launch it now. But we're very much using Optimism as the kind of template and originator. So how does Optimism or how does Filecoin differ? So Filecoin has specific requirements. Quick recap, Filecoin as a network, key points are store information, do this in a decentralized way, do it in a robust way. And the expectation is there's going to be exponential growth for at least the medium-term horizon, just with trends in computing and continued flow of capital towards decentralized applications. Now, this growth has requirements hard in the Filecoin network, hardware, capital, apps, but also it requires education, tooling, research, and community. And these things happen spontaneously, and that's great, but that's not something we should rely on. And that level of spontaneity is not necessarily what's optimal. So this is why retroactive public goods funding is so important, because it really boosts this in a way that can benefit the welfare of the whole network. So that's precisely what FIL RetroPGF solves for. It gives a way to efficiently and fairly allocate funding to impact that has been achieved, to sustainably incentivize future impact in the Filecoin network, and to maximize Filecoin network welfare in a positive some way. So to recap, it's essentially the intersection of three concepts: Filecoin, public goods, and retro funding. We had a lot of discussion already on public goods, but it's still worth recapping. Public goods meaning non-rivalrous and non-excludable, so they can't get used up and they're not exclusive. Examples in Filecoin network are things like research and development, the kind of deep pipeline of R&D that Filecoin relies on, and also like more practical, immediate things like the miner implementations and software, the dashboards that I use every day. I don't pay for this, so this is effectively a public good. So those are the key Filecoin public goods, which are super important for everybody in the ecosystem. And retro funding in the so as opposed to proactive funding, what we're talking about is awarding outcomes, not potential. other features of retroactive as opposed to proactive funding, it especially works well with having a feedback loop. Having that kind of definite outcome is really suited to this kind of iterative feedback loop structure that we want to have, and this supports decentralization really well. So these are kind of three key features. Okay, so how does this work with the Filecoin economy? The key is it has to be not linear and dissipative. Instead, we want something that's circular and that's feeding back. So initial funds will come from the funder. This goes into the FIL RetroPGF program. This is distributed to recipients in the network. Then that value has to flow back to the Filecoin ecosystem. Now, making sure that link is strong, that's really the key thing. And if we can ensure value flows back to the Filecoin ecosystem and funders are part of that, then you close the loop on that circularity. Do you want to give this one a shot?
So kind of what we need for the whole program is like, first off, we need staff to help run the program. So Tom and I are putting this thing together. We want your help to come do this. So if you're interested in helping us run this, come talk to us. We're going to be kind of like coming up with a set of like small part-time roles for a lot of folks around the community. And we kind of want to build this like working group to run this. The second thing we need this round structure. We're kind of targeting in the long term 2 to 4 rounds per year. Optimism right now is doing 2. We think we probably would like to have like more frequent rounds that are easier to run. But that's kind of like what we're orienting for now. So we'll start with round 1, see how that goes, and then decide later how many more we're going to do this year. But so you can stay tuned on how this is going to evolve. Now for the first round, what we need is funders. We need more funders to help fund FIL RPGF 1. FIL is going to be the first initial. We need tools. We will need a number of tools to run this. You already saw the first and major tool that we're going to use, which is the easy RetroPGF software that Kevin and Gitcoin and the whole community developed. We're going to need a set of batch holders. So we need impactful Filecoin contributors around the community to vote for projects. So we're going to have a batch holder application. And we need project submissions. We're going to need impactful projects that people care about to apply. Again, the first round is going to be smaller to just kind of get the training wheels going and kind of, we have to like get the tooling working with on FEVM and so on. We have to get the whole community understanding this whole system. We have to like get batch holders. We have to train everybody. So that first round is going to be like a big like let's learn how to bike sort of situation. And then after that, kind of like the next round after that will be larger. So yeah, let's go into round 1. So this is the overall time frame. We're sort of kind of introducing the concept now. Kind of like by the 15th of March, or like kind of at mid-March, we aim to kind of open applications and kind of have a deadline. Again, all of these dates are tentative because we're working with easy RetroPGF, the easy RetroPGF round. So this is tentative, but it's kind of like what we're hoping. Then kind of in April, we do the voting and the close. Again, this could be like, think of like a few weeks off potentially. But we hope that kind of like by May, June, we can do the distribution. And so that'll be kind of like the first round. And then after that, hopefully we can run another one later in the year, or potentially 2 more, depending on if we can get it really fast, we could run 2 more. But what's most likely to happen is that we'll run 2 this year. So we'll have, a set of funders and allocations initially. Again, in the long term, we think that this should be funded by the network itself, but we want to get it rolling and working and demonstrate the impact before we get there. So FIL will fund the first round. You can add your logo here and participate in funding public goods by contributing. Future rounds will be open to anyone in any group that wants to have influence in the course of the network. We're thinking of like kind of coupling funders with batch holder seats, and that way give us structure to be able to like help direct the funding goods, the funding of the public goods this way. We have to think through that and how that'll kind of work with the whole system and structure and whatnot. But yeah, long term, the network itself should fund it. Do you want to shift this?
Yeah, sure. Yep. So Just to say, so this is like the feedback loop of how we envisage the network being steered through this mechanism. So the funders, they provide the medium to influence, cause that action to happen. But the step before that is the badge holders, and they're really the brain of this operation. And they are interpreting the applications and deciding what should be funded. So in doing this, the badge holders' job is a critical part. They need to share their deep domain expertise across the different categories. The badge holders, we're looking for people who are strongly aligned with the RetroPGF principles as well as Filecoin's mission. But also, it's good to have a fresh perspective. So as the rounds evolve, we want to include more and new badge holders. And the badge holders will have a couple of jobs. So one is to vote, but also to help evolve this whole process as well. So what we would like to do, ideally, is set up a DAO, a FIL Retro Public Goods DAO that can help guide this process and bring the badge holders together. So here's one example of potential badge holder mechanics and how it might be set up. So a really important thing, we think, is seeding the distribution well. So there's probably some path dependence, and if we can start really well, those gains can compound more easily, faster. So this is one way to do it. If you took contributors from Filecoin repos, you'd see some of these faces, and we could sample from these, and that could be the initial distribution of badge holders. Now, this is just one way. It's not necessarily going to be like this. It could work like that. Do you want to say anything else here, Juan?
Yeah, I think there's probably some other contribution venues that aren't GitHub that we have to account for as well, but we can come up with another way of sampling that. Yeah, this is one of the key things where we can probably do some work on figuring out who might be good potential batch holders. We also really want to invite the community and invite the folks that want to do this work to come forward as well. The kind of right batch holder, RetroPGF requires good batch holder engagement. And so we want to, find the best fit of like the people that are around the community that have a lot of visibility and whose opinion will be really good, cross with the people that are going to put in the effort and thought into it to do a good job. And so we want to find that good intersection and then help kind of orient the program. Yeah, cool. So we'll be following the OP-RAN 3 template because that's easy and well structured and what the tooling is going to support. And then from there, you want to add here?
Just to say that we'll follow the Optimism style RetroPGF and we'll work with the tooling that Kevin Walkey set out. So that makes it super easy to run this whole thing, adding projects, voting, reviewing projects, creating badge holders. So that's really cool. Makes life easy for everybody. So this is really what we're opening now is the call for submissions. If you think you're contributing to public goods and you want to be part of this, please nominate yourself or a group or someone else. The types of categories that we're interested in seeing applications for are things like tooling, research, education, governance, things that affect end user experience. Yep.
Yeah, and we'll have like in the coming week or two, we'll ship out like links where you with instructions of what to do and whatnot. But just start thinking about it. So start thinking about what are the kinds of things that you would like to nominate. Start thinking about whether you want to be a batch holder, or who you think you could nominate batch holders. So who do you think would be a good batch holder? And we'll ship out some links with places of where to put all this.
So just to reiterate, we're launching today, so it's pretty exciting. This is a big step forwards for how the network's going to be guided in the future, I think. Immediate questions that we need to solve. So the point of the Dev Summit, we hope, should be to drive things forward. So how can you help us, really? So some immediate questions that come up are who will be the first badge holders, and who wants to be part of the DAO to help run this?
Yeah. Cool. And I think we'll have workshop time to discuss in detail a little bit later. But maybe I'll take any kind of quick questions now, and then kind of like the bigger, meatier discussion we can save for the workshop part. Any questions? Right.
I will just talk loudly. Question one. How many badge holders do we want to have? Like, what is the same number for this first prototype, given that there's cap herding involved in getting badge holders to actually do stuff? We've done a couple of prototypes of this in IKFS and Lotus Land of rewarding contributors. Maybe you already have this, but like in their target number of badge holders that we think is staying to the first set.
I'm trying to see if like it's screenshotted here. No, we don't. Do we know what good batch holder numbers come in?
I would recommend starting small. Galzal, start simple, small. When you feel good about it, ramp it more. So I would start with like 5 or 10 for the first round, training wheel round, and then like expand it up from there.
Okay.
Oh wow, cool. So like maybe like round 0 could be like 5 or 10. We do like the training wheels, and then we do like the round 1 with. I do think that like this, there's already like a lot of strong differences of opinion in the community about what needs to get funded, and so I do think that like we like just in this snapshot already we have a lot of opinions of what should be funded, and I would love to be able to sample that. So I would lean to like quickly get to kind of like on the order of like 30 to 50, but yeah.
It might be interesting in that to have, if you're going to do 5 to 10, then you could, for example, there are 5 stakeholder groups canonically that we've described in the ecosystem pentagram of like different roles that are being played. I was curious about scope. What, like, do we have a clear definition of what is or isn't considered in scope? I know you put some like exemplar things, but you know, education, for example, is like super broad.
Yep.
Is that like random people tweeting on the internet? Or is
if it gets nominated significantly and then selected to like have an application and people want to fund it, like, could be valuable. That's the point of like, that's the point of this mechanism. It's like you want to maybe describe categories loosely, but you really want to let the people that are batch holders drive the funding and then iteratively learn through the system. So we don't want to kind of like over restrict and say only these kinds of things, because then that's kind of like counter to the goal of like empowering the batch holders to decide.
Maybe this is a broader subject, but I'm curious how you're thinking about the discourse among badge holders to make the decision. Like, are the badge holders then made public, and is the process going to be blinded where they have like knowledge of the existing votes, or is it like a Discord-based approach where they're going to hawk and then White House keeps that adjusted?
I think for the first time we're gonna training wheels it and do what Kevin and others recommend and go from there. And then after that, how to adjust it over time. One of the key things is we do want to make it time efficient for everybody. Like, what we don't want to do is like DOS people with like a ton of like hard arguments. And I think that a system that is like iterative is lighter weight, and then over many rounds you arrive at like good outcomes. After reflecting, you don't have to get every round perfect. That's the point. It's like you can have rounds that people disagree with. It's okay. Like in the next round, the community can like revisit its own opinion. There was another question. Yeah, Charles.
Yeah, since first question, like so like in the beginning put was OP, right? That was talk about right points.
Yep.
So please 2 keyboard days, right? There are no connections.
I mean, there is a deep connection, which is like we're replicating the Optimism RPGF program here to create the FIL RPGF program, and these are 2 separate programs that are like modeled the same way. And we talked about this like earlier in the track, but like these kinds of systems, think of them as like single neurons that like do work. They can form a network, right? And so some of the batch holders will end up like being shared over time. They'll fund the same. Sometimes they'll fund an overlap of projects. You might have programs that fund other programs, like maybe FIL RPGF should fund OP RPGF a little bit because like it pioneered a bunch of the work that we're doing. So like we should like donate to that impact, right? Like, thank you. And so really think of them as like a separate like node in this graph, but like connected for sure.
I hope I said there are system people including big Twitter. I need to understand how that works. But my second question is like, you say like the batch holders, right? They have some GitHub and also some community leaders, and they also have their own process like me, right? Probably I can be some batch holder in the future, particularly, but I also have running some project within Filecoin ecosystem where their company be interested in this kind of innovation.
Well, yeah, it's a good question. So look, all of us work on lots of projects across this very large ecosystem. And so we have to like navigate those like relationships and so on with like good nuance. We do want we do want good opinion and good leadership to show up. And so that means like sometimes because you work on multiple projects, you can see the value in certain areas. And like that's a good thing. We do want to be careful, as Kevin mentioned earlier, about like when conflicts of interest produce like bad results. And so we want to like really be go into that like with good policies and good kind of like evolving it over time. Because so many people work across so many possible things, there will be like conflicts of interest all over the place, and that's okay. We just have to like make sure that the decisions make sense to everybody, not just the people with the conflict.
Is there like best practice to stop because they look gone through this of like, because they have batch holders who have projects that they work on or who are investors in that are participating in the OP round. So like, is it like public disclosure, like private justification for why you funded the things that you funded, and like, have enough batch holders that like it comes out of your wash.
Yeah, the Optimism policy is that you can't vote for a project that you have no upside in, and they actually ejected someone who's in the protocol guild who voted to the protocol guild for doing that. From there you can add nuances, like you could request, maybe you could have a policy where you request an exception to that, where maybe just the composition of the badge holders is actually broad enough and diverse enough that if one person can't vote for a project, it doesn't make a meaningful difference. So there's ways around that, but the default Optimism policy and I hope to workflow can't vote for stuff that you have upside in. Like I didn't vote for it in RetroPGF 3 because I
just for the I mean,
Yep.
I built the activating process might be a little bit tricky, especially projects that don't power down in that grab. I want reputation. There be guidance around like, how do you?
Yeah, we'll have a form. We'll have a form with like the info that projects submit. And I believe like OP has had the structure of like you first nominate and then you apply, because like the quick nomination to just do a quick screen so people don't put a bunch of time and effort in the application. And then after the nominations, then there's like applications that are like a little bit more in depth. Cool. I think we're running out of time, so I'm gonna cut off here. Thank you very much. Look forward to funding public goods with all of you.
Cheers. Thank you.